You know, every few months we get another blockbuster cancellation or delay from like a major publisher, and it's usually maybe one game delayed or something obscure gets canceled. But you want to know what Ubisoft just did? They just canceled the long anticipated Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time remake. Along with 5 other projects, they delayed a bunch more, they closed studios, they've shifted teams, and basically they're just rewriting the whole company pretty much. I wish I was kidding, guys. I had no plans on making a video today. I gotta be real with you. I thought, oh, I could relax today, put my feet up, let out a sigh of relief. Instead, I'm getting roundhouse kicked in the neck by this news, so here we are now, working overtime, I guess, because what in the hell is happening over at Ubisoft again, man? Didn't I just do a video on these guys about all the other things that's going on there with the lawsuits and stuff, and now we have this? Really? Let's get into this, man. It's a mess. As Reuters or Routers or however you say it reported just now, Ubisoft unveils sweeping restructuring updates targets. So this new restructuring will split the entire company now into 5 units that are going to focus on specific game genres and franchises. As it reads here, under this new structure, Ubisoft's 5 creative houses will oversee their portfolios from brand development to sales and be responsible for their own budget. Each division will have separate management teams. Their pay will be tied to metrics like player engagement and value creation, the company said. Like, what is happening right now? The way that I'm also interpreting this is that Ubisoft will be splitting their teams in such a way that there's going to be like the Far Cry division, this one's going to be working on like For Honor, etc., etc. It is insane, however, that each of these 5 divisions apparently anyways, as it's being reported, will be wholly dependent on their performances with their players' engagement, and that's actually kind of interesting. This could mean that if any one of these divisions underperforms, it would lead to like mass layoffs, but also probably just pull the other divisions in that are doing better to now fix the divisions that are not doing so hot. It reminds me a lot actually of how Call of Duty is structured. You know, you have Treyarch, you have Infinity Ward, and you have Sledgehammer. Yet at this point, pretty much every time a new Call of Duty does come out, these 3 studios plus the support ones like Raven and High Moon have to come in to help finish these games anyways. What I'm trying to say, it's not a very healthy way of making games pretty much. And since Tencent now basically owns Ubisoft, it's pretty clear that they want to turn Ubisoft's IPs into money printing machines. And I mean, hey, you can't really blame them. After, you know, they just injected like $1 billion and then some into the dying corpse of Ubisoft recently too. So it turns out, as seen here, that Vantage Studios is one of those 5 studios that got reported. And Vantage is going to be working mostly on Assassin's Creed, since that is Ubisoft's crown jewel. And the other 4 studios or houses, as you can see there, will work on things like multiplayer or casual family-friendly games too. It is interesting. I was under the assumption that like Vantage was the entirety of Ubisoft just made into like a single mega studio, but this actually makes more sense. But again, it also means that with this new structure that Tencent has the ability now to lay off people a lot more easily too, because these studios are now not a single entity, so to speak, but they work independently of one another, kind of. Sure, they all work for Tencent and Ubisoft, but you get what I mean. In all of this though, Ubisoft's net bookings are looking somewhere around 1.5 billion euros, but they are also having an operating loss of about $1 billion or so too. This means that we're in that growing pain stage of all of this. It's in flux, okay? So now let's switch over to videogameschronicle.com. With their article, as you can see here, so Prince of Persia remake got canceled outright. It's as dead can be. If you remember, this got announced quite a while ago, but it looked kind of terrible. Then the team then promised to fix it. Then art and screenshots got leaked. It still didn't look very good. And then Tencent has now axed the whole project because they don't want to put any more money into it. But what's crazy is beyond the Prince of Persia remake being canceled, 7 other games have also been canceled too, apparently. And this was all decided very recently, after Tencent did a thorough review of Ubisoft's entire portfolio, which is kind of yikes, I gotta say. As Video Games Chronicle said here, this review led to the decision to refocus its portfolio, reallocate resources, and comprehensively revise its roadmap over the next 3 years, Ubisoft said. Ubisoft said its focus will be on a return to exceptional levels of quality on the open world adventure segment, and to step change the group's position in the games as a service native experiences segment. Good lord, man. Have they learned anything? Like, they're just going to be doing what they did before, but now they're going to have Tencent money. Of these 7 games canceled, 1 is Prince of Persia, obviously. 3 of those were new IPs, apparently. 1 was like a mobile game, and the identity of like that 6th canceled one, no one knows what it is yet, but it's, well, you know, it's gone anyway, so like, what's the point? But as you can see here, Ubisoft did confirm that the Prince of Persia Persia remake cancellation, and they also posted a whole apology that pretty much amounts to, yeah, we screwed up, sorry, but it's not happening anymore. As also seen here, Ubisoft's chief financial officer stated that the reason for these cancellations is mostly because of the fierce competition from other game development studios out here making amazing games. And what Ubisoft was currently making was not nearing the quality needed to compete with these other games, which I do believe that actually. Because Ubisoft hasn't been making competitive video games for a while now. They're kind of just been making slop for years, let's be honest. But circling back to that whole Ubisoft has learned nothing from their content approach, look at this from Insider Gaming. Ubisoft's new model will now focus on open world games and games as a service like experiences. So you mean like how Ubisoft has been making games for 16 years now, pretty much again, I guess? When have they not released a game that was to some capacity also a live service game too? Even Assassin's Creed has become live service in a sense. When Valhalla released, you had a whole cash store with multiple outfits and mounts and even experience boosters day one. Shadows had the same treatment despite both games being obviously single-player open-world RPG games. They even managed to implement a cash shop into Mirage, which was a much smaller experience, and despite that, Ubisoft was like, no, we're still giving it a cash shop anyways, we don't care what you think. I was, maybe stupidly, hoping that this shakeup with Tencent would force Ubisoft to maybe pivot and reimagine themselves, but it's very obvious that their hearts are still set on open-world games only. Which if done well, sure, they can be amazing, but I don't really align amazing with Ubisoft game design anymore, you know? They've been trying to make Assassin's Creed into The Witcher 3 ever since they turned the series into an RPG game, pretty much. And look, I liked Origins, but none of those RPG era AC games really hold a candle to The Witcher 3. But it mostly just comes down to the fact that Ubisoft's writing is just not as good as their competition. You can make your world as big as you want, none of that really matters if nobody cares about what's going on inside of it, you know? That's the issue here that Ubisoft fails to rectify time and again. And it's obvious that the push for games as a service also proves that they've learned nothing at all. They still want to heavily monetize their games no matter how big or small they end up being. Apparently another big thing that Ubisoft is going all in on, according to Insider Gaming, is player-facing generative AI. That's the word said in the article, so I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. Here's exactly what was reported, okay? Let me read it for you. Ubisoft's significant reset has been prompted by a more selective AAA market, increased competition in the shooter genre, and the challenges publishers face in creating brands amid rising costs. This has resulted in a new value creation model designed to make Ubisoft a more gamer-centric organization structured around creative genres. The revamped Ubisoft model focuses on open-world adventures and a games-as-a-service approach, bolstered by targeted investments, deeper specialization, and cutting-edge technology. This advanced technology includes accelerated investments in player-facing generative AI. So there you have it as proof for you all to see. They are 100% going into generative AI in order to create content for their games. Now, we don't know exactly what that means yet. What do you mean? What do you mean generative AI? My guess maybe would be, let's use Assassin's Creed here for as an example. This generative AI would probably create randomized missions for you to complete in the game world in order to keep players playing for longer periods of time. I would assume probably that voice actors' voices will be funneled into the AI to allow Ubisoft and Tencent to create voice lines that can then, create plot lines and quests for you to complete in the game. You're likely thinking, why do this? What is the purpose of endless quests with no rhyme or reason? It's pretty simple. It's just meant to keep you in the game longer, guys. Unlocking more stuff, I guess, chasing higher loot and whatnot. But it's also done to increase the player metrics on Ubisoft's spreadsheet so that they can show that to their investors. And yes, also to entice you so that you stay in the game longer and grinding becomes maybe harder to do later on. You might dabble in the cash shop, buy yourself a booster or two, or maybe an armor bundle. Why not? To keep yourself looking fresh as you play longer or advancing quicker while again doing these generative AI quests, I guess. This is really the only reason I can think of as to why they would do this. From a company standpoint, it probably looks smart, I guess. Oh, we got all these quests ready to go and we barely did any work to make them. But to the users, you kind of start to see yourself like a pig eating slop when you're actively engaging in what is so obviously meant to be content for content's sake, pretty much. Either way, it doesn't really fill me me with much confidence, especially knowing that they purposely just canceled Prince of Persia, which is obviously not an open world game at all, which is likely why it got canceled by Tencent, because they didn't see value in a game that can't be overtly monetized and given incentives so players can engage endlessly forever. Sands of Time has a very obvious beginning, middle, and end. These sorts of companies don't want games that end per se anymore. It's kind of sad, but they want your engagement. They want your eyeballs on the screen playing, right? They want to ensure you to stay on Far Cry or whatever else over the other games you could be playing instead from their rivals. But their big Gigabrain move here is another big announcement that also proves to me that Ubisoft has, genuinely learned nothing from any of this either. As Insider Gaming also reported here, Ubisoft also wants their core franchises to become annual billion-dollar brands. Yes, you heard that one right. Annual, guys, with a capital A. You can't be serious, but so the idea here is that Ubisoft genuinely believes it's now positioned itself in such a way that they can achieve $1 billion or more per brand every single year in revenue, which is insane. Why this is absolutely stupid of an expectation is pretty simple, because Rainbow Six Siege, which is Ubisoft's most profitable game of all time, by the way, has generated Ubisoft about $3.8 billion in revenue. However, it achieved that from 2016 all the way to 2024. So it took 8 years to make that amount of money, which is great, right? But technically speaking, in this brave new world, I guess, that Ubisoft is pushing here, even their biggest release of all time would then underperform based on their now current standards and expectations. Assassin's Creed as a whole as a brand has made about $4 billion in revenue in the last 10 years. That's multiple games, expansions, DLC outfits, boosters, whatever else. So Ubisoft wants like a quarter of what AC made in 10 years, but every year for the rest of time. I think we can all agree that this expectation is not only unrealistic, it's downright moronic actually. You guys can't be serious if you think you can achieve this so regularly. This would mean these teams would have to be making like an Assassin's Creed game or something available every single year, pretty much, probably, to now meet these sales targets, which is frankly kind of impossible to do, especially with how big they tend to make these games now. It just doesn't seem realistic. The only time I can remember Ubisoft being able to release a new Assassin's Creed game every year was back when AC2 and then Brotherhood and Revelations came out. But let's be real, you could fit all three of these games' worlds into a single Odyssey or Valhalla, and it would barely make up 20% of the map, not even that at best. The reason why Ubisoft could release more games faster back then were because they weren't the size of countries. These days, Ubisoft would be unable to reach that same level of scope without massively cutting corners and reducing the quality too. And if Ubisoft or Ubisoft, however you say, whatever, did make those games smaller anyways, it would also technically go against their own design philosophy that they already detailed. That they still want the big open world games as a service. Well, if you want that, you can't be releasing stuff too often then. Maybe they mean they can expect $1 billion by releasing a game and then supporting it with DLC and whatnot, and maybe, and this is being generous by the way, releasing like a new AC or Far Cry every 2 years, I guess. Even then, that probably still isn't realistic. But with their push for generative AI use, I mean, who knows at this point, right? Either way, this kind of just tells me they've learned nothing from their mistakes. Because these exact moves that they're making now are what led to their implosion and saturation in the first place. How can you look at the past 10 years of your company, all the problems and more that happened, and think to yourself, yeah, we screwed up, but let's just do that again, shall we? Like, what are you doing? You know this doesn't work. It didn't work the last time. So why are you just doing it again? Look, I would love more Assassin's Creed games like in the scope of Mirage. Lock the game into a single city with some outside areas maybe, but we don't need every Assassin's Creed game being the size of Odyssey. Like, do you guys remember Odyssey and how big that game was? It was insane, but they couldn't reasonably release a game that size every single year. Now, if you're releasing a big, huge AC game every year with some Far Cry game and Rainbow Six and more, that's a lot of your own games also competing amongst all the other things releasing too. And normally I would give a company the benefit of the doubt here, but dude, this is Ubisoft. They're like the poster child of the they-themers, of like how not to do things right these days for a reason. You guys tanked your company so bad you had to have Tencent save you. Like, look at this creative house division, okay? I'll put it on screen for you so you can better understand how Ubisoft will be split here. So Vantage does Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six. Creative House 2 is Ghost Recon, Splinter Cell, and The Division. Creative 3 is stuff like The Crew, For Honor, and Brawlhalla. 4 is Anno, Beyond Good and Evil. That's been in development for like 10 years, by the way. And then Creative 5 is stuff like Just Dance and the family game stuff. The structure kind of makes sense to a point, but it still doesn't feel as though it's going to work out the way that they intended to be anyways. Definitely at times, all of these creative houses will run into problems inevitably and need help from one another's, and like eventually one or two or more of these are going to falter. I mean, layoffs will happen. Then what happens? You need to then spill talent from the other studios to help out now, as if all of that wasn't bad enough. Look at this from GameIndustry.biz. Ubisoft is asking all staff to return to office full-time to boost the collective performance for AAA. way. Like, you can't be serious, guys. All your staff now returning to office too. Are you guys being serious right now? This is going to mess up so many schedules for employees who have kids or like elderly parents, man. Not to mention, this is a surefire way to have people also quit the company because it's unrealistic to believe that all of these employees can make the trip to the office every single day depending on where they live. But according to Ubisoft, it's all being done to boost performance. Here's what they said. We really want to strengthen on-site collaboration, the collective dynamic across teams, SVP of Studio Operations Marie Sophie told GameIndustry.biz. We know that in-person collaboration and interactions are key enablers of efficiency, creativity, and collective success in this persistently selective market. It's one enabler among others, but it's really one we believe in. Like, oh my god, dude, Marie Sophie is still there too, dude. The same people who drove this company into the ground are still in charge there. Like, what are we doing, Ubisoft? But they further doubled down. Here's what they said. It's an intention. We will, of course, discuss in due time with the different countries the modus operandi or operandi, I can't even say that, whatever, and the flexibility linked to the evolution of our model. But the objective is really linked to the quality of our games and the quality of our creativity. And it's one enabler among others for the creative houses to reconnect with success and team engagement. This is not going over well, man. So many people work, like, dude, so many people work remotely, and it's like totally fine, right? The reason why companies want people to come back to the office is really for other reasons. One is very likely that Ubisoft has leases on very big buildings that they pay for, and they likely feel like they're wasting the money that they're spending on leasing by having all of these employees not being in the actual building. It makes it a waste to them, I guess. But the other key reason, and this is like the main one, is because Ubisoft and Tencent likely want to be able to control the monitors that their employees' actions are on more strictly. It's what it's always meant for, really. As you likely know, Ubisoft has had a ton of leaks in the past. Likely, a lot of those came from remote workers whose activities weren't watched as closely due to Ubisoft not having direct access to 24/7 to these employee computers. So in order for them to catch leaks or monitor behaviors more often, they are demanding this return to office. Either way, like I said, this is going to cause people to leave the company entirely because it's uprooting their lives and their schedules because Mary Sophie or whoever else wants to watch your computer at their leased building more closely, pretty much. And games are made in international settings too, plus you can just Zoom call or whatever you want to do to each other and speak that way. It's the same thing. I get what Ubisoft is trying to do. They want to return game development to the older ways. Maybe that's how they want to frame it. But I think it's just so they can monitor their developers more easily, man. That's the real reason that I think. Most companies these days do a hybrid structure for a reason. Even Sandfall, which did Clair Obscur Expedition 33, they utilized that structure. Some devs worked in-house, others from home. If you don't know, they outsourced their animations, for example, to a team in Korea, so they wouldn't have had those amazing animations in that game if those South Korean developers needed to be in-house all the way over in France. Like, you know what I mean? You're basically stifling the creative strengths of your teams and who you can hire to help you by doing this sort of thing, but that's what they want to do. Again, taking everything announced today, this is either going to be an amazing turnaround or a recipe for disaster. However, there's another big upset too. Originally, that Black Flag remake was going to be coming in a few months from this video debuting. It's supposed to come out in 2026. But now, as Insider Gaming reported here, Black Flag's remake has been delayed quite a bit amidst all of this too. According to Insider Gaming, they were told that Ubisoft has now officially delayed one game from 2026 to 2027 that was almost ready for release. And according to what they know about Ubisoft's games that are in the current pipeline, the only logical game that fits this description is the Black Flag remake. So it's very likely that it will now come in 2027 instead, but I guess we'll see. But that's kind of a bummer, but there you go. It got delayed amidst all of this, allegedly anyways. And also with all this stuff happening, Ubisoft has also cryptically announced that they will be having layoffs coming in the near future as well. The exact date given was February 12th, 2026 will be the day when Ubisoft announces all of the latest layoffs at their company. Which again, right? You're trying to position yourselves as this company with 5 creative houses that will each make all of these games, but you're now getting rid of your own manpower as well now too. And they'll also have to come into the office as well. And you canceled a ton of games as well. It sounds like a major reset to me, but it also just sounds like Ubisoft is kind of cooked as well, you know? What makes this more than routine corporate reshuffling though is the scale of how this is going and how it's happening and how it's being handled. It is a reset that is brought on, not just really by creative direction, but honestly financial pressure and like the missed targets and the promise of turning their biggest brands into these like year in, year out money making machines, but they're kind of crazy, dude. Because that Prince of Persia remake cancellation is still a really big red flag if you ask me, because let's be honest, that wasn't just a creative decision. It was actually a reflection of like the deeper dysfunction that a project that should have been a relatively safe bet somehow becoming too messy to just complete all of a sudden, but now the company decides, it's not worth our attention anymore. Yet Ubisoft was quick to say that Prince of Persia as a franchise is still important to them, but not without the one project that fans were actually excited about playing, of course, in the first place. And when it comes to turning your biggest franchises into annual releases, it also leads to franchise fatigue. There's less innovation because you got to get the thing out the door every year too. The creative decisions that oftentimes get rushed, and then don't get me started on the internal burnout for the people that are making these games in the first place too. But this design structure has annoyed players for years. Look at World of Warcraft or Call of Duty for good examples of this. But Ubisoft is like, no, that's how we're going to do it too now, I guess, which is like, it's just so puzzling, dude. I don't understand. But let's also not overlook that they're doing this with Tencent money on the table too, and the very real possibility of these financial targets going sideways. I mean, everything won't go perfectly. Things are going to happen. And if you're now restructuring around top brands because earnings aren't where you want them to be, that now means that Ubisoft is going to be increasingly strategic and also cost averse instead of being creative and bold, which is kind of what you want. But all of these patterns just kind of tell me that Ubisoft isn't necessarily trimming their fat. They're just trying to focus a little too much, honestly. And when you're canceling games that people wanted and you're delaying others, it just tells people that you're kind of out of touch. You're just too scared to innovate. And that is the key. That you really only care about the guaranteed money, that you're not really in it for the art. You're just there for the cash pretty much, and that's it. But what it also tells me is that Ubisoft's goal, whether they want to admit this or not, is to build predictable billion-dollar franchises that will deliver the strong yearly results. Sure, maybe, I guess, but not really delivering great games, you know what I mean? And here's the big problem with that strategy. AAA studios that focus on milking their franchises, they end up losing what made them special in the first place, like almost always. Call of Duty, the EA sports titles, just long, tiring annual sequels in general prove this time and time again. But ultimately, what this comes down to is an identity crisis at Ubisoft. They used to define open world innovation. Now they're just like reducing themselves to a machine that makes money, and that's pretty much it. And that's where your average gamer will get frustrated, and you can't really blame them because Prince of Persia wasn't just like another IP to fans. It's a beloved franchise that has like real potential, but they keep squandering it. Like, for God's sakes, did you know that Assassin's Creed was birthed out of Prince of Persia? Like, you wouldn't have it without these games to begin with. And Ubisoft just dumped it like it was nothing to now chase revenue metrics in other fields, I guess, over like giving people what they really wanted. And that doesn't just annoy me, man, but it saddens me too. But as you can see from all of this, a lot is happening. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. It's a lot, but hopefully you understand what's going on. But again, thanks for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.